This video is going to explain how to write categorical propositions, and it'll look at the form that they should appear in and then identify some of the common mistakes that are often done when people are trying to write these. So to begin, looking at the basic form of categorical propositions, there's going to be three elements of this, or three parts. The first is a quantifier. All categorical propositions are going to start with one of these three words: all, no, or some. That's the only things you can start them with. You have to make sure you use one of those. The second part is the terms of it, and there's two of these. There's the subject term and the predicate term, and these are always going to be nouns or noun phrases. That means they have to be people, places, or things, just like the old Schoolhouse Rock video. So you can talk about animals, you can talk about dogs, you can talk about red cars, you can talk about anything you want as long as it's a group of objects. And it can be narrowed down, like red cars is a subset of the group of cars. So, but it has to be a noun or a noun phrase. And the third part is the copula. This is the little tiny word are, A-R-E. And in one case it'll be are not, but you need to have the copula in there. Remember, we're talking about two groups of objects, so we're talking about how they relate to each other, and that is the verb are. So that has to be in there. If the word are is not in there, you don't have a categorical proposition. So make sure you have the quantifier, two nouns or noun phrases in the word are. Then you're going to have everything you need for a categorical proposition. Now there's four forms of these. We can have four different types of propositions. The first is the A proposition, which is all SRP. That's its form or its pattern. And what you would do is all blank are blank, and you would fill in the blanks with the nouns or noun phrases. But it has to be that all and the are there, and then the two groups where the blanks are. The E proposition is no SRP, and in this case you have to have no blank are blank. And again, it's the same thing. You have to have two nouns or noun phrases in those blanks. The next one is the I proposition, which is some SRP, and so we have some SR, some blank are blank, and then finally you have some S are not P. This is the O proposition, and you'd have some blank are not blank. This is where the copula includes the are in this case. But those are the four forms. You're just filling in the blanks. You identify the two classes you're going to talk about, and they have to be nouns or noun phrases. I got to keep stressing that because that's one of the main errors I see. So you just take those forms and fill in the blanks. That's what you want to do for categorical propositions. Now, what I see for mistakes, and this is the most common things I see, is one, not using classes. People tend to use adjectives and think that's a class. All fish are slimy. Slimy is an adjective. Fish is a class, but slimy is an adjective. So to correct this, we have to change slimy into some noun phrase. So all fish are slimy objects. It could be all fish are slimy animals, whatever you want it to be, but it has to be a class. There needs to be a noun in there to go with that. So what are those things that are slimy we're talking about? And we're saying all the fish are in that group. Okay? Some people are not funny. Well, this looks right. It's got some are not people funny, but funny again is an adjective. So in this case, it's clear we're talking about people. So we'd have to write it as some people are not funny people. So make sure you're using classes and not adjectives. Second, and this one is fairly common as well, people forget to use the copula, the word are. We need that in there. And they'll just, instead of using a second class, what they'll do is use a verb. So no turtles run fast. Yeah, that may be true, but turtles is a class, run fast is not. So we need to rephrase that to use two classes and then put the word are in there. So no turtles are fast runners would be a categorical propositions. Some children scream. We'll see this, something like this. And what we're talking about here are creatures that scream, not scream. Scream is not a class, and there's no are there. So some children are what? They are creatures or people that scream. Okay. And finally, the other one I see is people sometimes will not provide a quantifier and just assume whoever's reading the proposition knows what they're talking about. So boulders are rocks. Well, what are we talking about? How many boulders are we talking about? this case, it's some boulders or rocks. When I wrote it, I was thinking, oh, you could have ice boulders. Those are not rocks. But I can't assume that. I have to make it clear. So we have to ensure we do a quantifier in here. And what happens a lot of times, people will do multiple things here and not put them in. Runny eggs taste good. Okay, well, how many eggs are we talking about? There's no quantifier. There's no copula. There's no R. And I only see one class, runny eggs. So this one needs to have a quantifier. All runny eggs are what tasting good? Well, they're foods, so foods that taste good. So we got to remember, no adjectives. They're all nouns and noun phrases. Make sure you include the copula and include the quantifier. So this should help clarify how to write out these categorical propositions in standard form.